now we're getting into the story of Playa Vista. As a court case goes along, we lose in the lower court. So we appeal and we go to the appellate court. In the appellate court, we're still unaware at this time that there is no environmental impact report because the city attorney has sworn that there is one and filed it with the court. So we assumed it was true. They wouldn't lie on something like that, would they?
Oh, no.
Oh, no. So we lose in Superior Court. We immediately appeal and go to the appellate court. Anybody can go to the appellate court. The appellate court judges overrule the lower court, and they make a finding, basically, that the city must vacate their approvals on their phony-ass methane mitigation system for the purposes of determining whether to do a subsequent or a supplement to the environmental impact report and address the long-term dewatering problems of the area and proceed accordingly as required by CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, which means notifying all these state agencies and have them approving the work. When this order came down, the city of LA did the only thing they could do. They continued to issue building permits on this methane system. The developer, Goldman Sachs, well, they did the only thing they could do. They kept building as fast as they could and selling condos and buildings to people without disclosing the fact that the safety system underlying the building had been thrown out by the court.
Ooh.
Oh, my God.
So we continue to go around in the lower court system. And what happens with an appellate court order is it comes back to the Superior Court, and the Superior Court then issues the order. Well, they issue the order, and of course the city promptly ignores the order. The developer ignores the order. So we took them back up for violating the order. We showed up with 900 pages of post-writ approvals where the city continued to inspect and build these systems when we knew that they were under court order to stop. We pointed this out to the Superior Court judge who looked at the appellate court order and told us that vacate really doesn't mean vacate. And from there, things just went downhill fast, where we spent another 5 years trying to get out of the Superior Court. Well, what happened down there was the judge, George Wu, was so unbelievably corrupt that Bush made him a federal judge. And he got bounced upstairs. The next judge coming in takes one look at this case and goes, "Not me," recused himself. Get up in front of another judge. "Oh, well, let's see what this is about." "Oh, not me," recuses himself. We sat in front of 8 judges in less than a year waiting for a judge to actually take the case and not recuse themselves. So we get a judge who apparently was new to CEQA, didn't understand the case too well and what was involved and the political pitfalls, and did the stupid thing of accepting the case. And before long, it was a lady, and before long, she could not look us straight in the face. One of the most memorable times in court was when she took the other party into her chambers and left my attorney out. Comes back and says, my attorney pipes up right away and says, "I would like to go on the record and voice my objections." And the judge says, "There will be no record of this hearing. Here's my minute order." And basically, there goes our due process rights under the United States Constitution. I think it's the 14th Amendment. One of the interesting things we picked out was how Playa Vista, the people building the buildings and things, had basically donated money to, I think, 14 out of 15 of our city councilmen. And this violates the Political Reform Act of 1972. And if you give one of these jokers more than, I think, $300-400, then they cannot vote the interest of the party that gave them the money for 12 months. That's the way the law reads. It was, I forget all the details. We showed up with probably 1,200 pages from the city on which councilman received which money from which developers, and the judge didn't seem to be able to see that either. So finally, the return to the writ proceeding comes where the city is saying they complied with the order and they want to be let out of the lawsuit. Well, it's pretty hard to do a supplement to an EIR that doesn't exist, and they didn't want to get into the EIR process, so they basically did nothing but keep building and somehow argued they did what they were supposed to. Being that the Superior Court judges are told what to do and corrupt, they let them out of the lawsuit. So we figured, okay, we just go back up to the appellate court and say, hey, there's no environmental impact report. You were defrauded. They never stopped building. They kept building. And it's been a charade. So the appellate court then released them from the lawsuit.
God almighty.
10 years of litigation and $500,000 down the tube.
Wow.
Is my environmental group ever going to get involved in another environmental lawsuit? We don't think so.
No.
We had maybe a dozen file cabinets filled with all the documents for this case.
Oh my God.
We had enough that would fill a small room. We had to rent a storage locker, which was about, I think, 12 feet square, half of which was dedicated to just housing all the documents for this case.
Wow.
Yeah, all the filings.
So, fast forward now, what's happening? Hydrogen sulfide is dissolving the concrete foundations underneath the buildings. The buildings were built on fraudulent geological reports. The hydrogen sulfide's eating the concrete. And 3 years after the buildings are built, the windows and doors aren't fitting. They're breaking.
Big shock.
Big shock. And what do? They're in there replacing subterranean foundations on 50-unit condos on buildings that are 3 years old.
Oh my God.
A pipe burst in the library. Slab on grade. Cement slab right on the dirt. They have carpet in the library. Once the carpet was wet, you could see bubbles coming up through the carpet everywhere.
Oh, no.
The fire department built a new fire station there, oblivious to what's going on. The methane alarms, there's actually methane alarms in the garages, so when the methane levels get up to 1.25% by volume, a quarter of the lower explosive limit where the garage is going to blow up, the alarms go off. They regularly have to run people out of the buildings when the alarms go off at night because gases come out of the ground in such large amounts. One lady made the mistake of having one of these rolling clothes racks, and she put a bunch of clothes on it in her car that were in her car. She's in the clothing business. And she made the mistake of brushing the clothes against each other. The static electric charge caused the clothes to burst into flames.
Wow.
Oh, no.
We have in the area of Manchester and on the Marina Peninsula occasionally, there'll be explosions in the storm drains that will take manhole covers and blow them up to the second floor. We had firefighters in the Manchester area, which is on top of this gas area, get called out to a place where a manhole cover had blown up, and they were going to go into an electrical vault. And firemen are a bunch of little kids with nice toys, so there was a lock in their way, no problem. They just pick up their giant abrasive saw with a big gasoline motor on it, go up, cut the lock off, vault blows up, and kills one of the firemen.
Yeah.
And injures the other one.
This was in downtown Westchester, by the way.
Yes.
This is at La Tijera and Sepulveda.
Yes. So an investigation ensued as to what killed the firefighter, and they determined that the electrical insulation on the wires put out explosive gas that blew up. Basically, the fire department covered for the gas company and the city and covered up the problem and let their own members die because they wanted to cover it up.
Yeah, that's an outrage.
There's a memorial plaque on the building now. This is on the southeast corner of Sepulveda and La Tijera on the back of the building where this vault was.
Yeah.
You see a bronze
Take a
plaque
picture
there.
of it.
Yes.
Now, just to get a little more back to the water issue, in the old days they used to say whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over. Turns out that somebody in one of the state agencies told us to look up who owns the water in the aquifer underneath Playa Vista.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we hadn't thought about in a decade. Turns out we found out who owns it. It's a state aquifer. It's an unadjudicated aquifer. It's owned by the state of California, and they own the water rights. Turns out, if you put a shovel in the ground and you hit water, you just dug a water well. And you better have a permit to dig a water well. Now, turns out that Playa Vista never pulled any permits before they dug all the water wells that are now subterranean garages. And they had no permits to pump water out of the state aquifer. And what are they doing with that water today? They are simply dumping it into the sanitary sewer system.
Really?
Now, to dump water into the sewer system, first of all, you have to meter it to know what quantity. See, what generally happens in a building is, say you have an apartment building, they'll make an assumption that 80% of the water usage is going to go down the drain.
Yeah.
And maybe 20% is going to go for irrigation on plants. So they know that your sewer rates are going to be about 80% of what your water rate is. That's what your usage is going to be, and that's how they generate it. What happened at Playa Vista was the developers would go to the Department of Sanitation, City of Los Angeles, take out a permit that's about 50 pages to fill out the first few lines on the first page and hand it back to them. And then they would simply go hook up to the sewer. And they would not monitor what they were putting in this sewer in terms of chemical composition, ever. And they would not monitor the volume. So now we suspect they were dumping the project in the neighborhood of 1 to 2 million gallons of water that was polluted with chemicals from Howard Hughes's day, as well as from the oil field, into the sewer that goes out into the Pacific Ocean, violating the Federal Clean Water Act that says you can't put polluted water into an already impacted federal waterway, which is Santa Monica Bay.
In what time frame was that? The million gallons. How often was that?
Every day.
Thank you.
1 million gallons a day.
1 to 2 million gallons of water a day. See, what they have done, well, it has to, because you've got the LA aquifer is running down along Bologna Creek, and what they're doing is, to keep the height of the buildings down with codes and everything, they've lowered the water table in this aquifer 8 to 10 feet. Now, the problem with lowering it 8 to 10 feet is a couple of things. They're drawing salt water in from the Pacific Ocean into a freshwater aquifer, contaminating it. And this aquifer also communicates with aquifers that serve cities to the south, because it gets into the Silverado aquifer, which I believe is what Jack here draws water off of for his house. And being that salt water is heavier than fresh water, it's going to migrate down into the aquifer and take all the pollution with it.
Oh my God.
We're now going to different state agencies to try and figure out, what are we going to do with this water problem? Well, it turns out that my friends are working more on this than I am. I get the overview. But basically what happened was there was a bond issue to study the wetlands, to try and set them back and do things right. And the voters of the state of California voted this bond issue through. The State Water Board was supposed to do a multi-million-dollar study as to what was going on with the Bologna aquifer. They decided to start the study east of Sepulveda and not cover the Bologna wetlands and the entire aquifer there, and not cover the nurseries. It's all wetlands where many species come in to breed. So they decided to start the study a mile away from where these guys were working. When we tried to ask for the study, we found out that there was a public-private partnership formed. That private people had come in and were working with the public people to do the studies. Well, we traced it down to see who they were. Turns out they belonged to the developer.
I'm shocked.
And then we said, well, where's the proposal? How do they get this funding? Well, apparently somebody made a phone call. They didn't have to make a proposal. Millions of dollars of state money, bond money, was just handed to them for a report that they never did.
Oh.
One of the alarming things was my own aunt, Dorothy Green, who started Heal the Bay and helped get through the Coastal Commission initiative, was one of the people that was on the take. So the environmentalists that were supposed to be helping us sort this problem out are stealing money from the state bond issue to fund their projects as long as it doesn't interfere with what the developer wants to do, is also siphoning money out of the bond issue. So we're like, well, where's the reports? We want to audit you. We want to see where the money went, what you did. And they go, well, we're private. We don't have to answer to you. Well, you took public money. Oh, yes, we took public money to do this study. Well, how did that happen? So we found out that the lady that was working at the State Water Board had simply used their email address and their address when she set up the business to help siphon the money out.
Oh.
God.
So it all went through the water board address, which is a state EPA water board, and it went through their email accounts.
Oh my God.
So we then were still saying, well, where are the studies? And we can't get the studies that they never did. So we finally went to the state treasurer to ask them why they're releasing millions of dollars and giving them to private people that never even asked for the money in any kind of paperwork.
Yeah.
And the answer was, oh, I guess we're going to have to stop doing that. And so we don't believe they're giving the bond money away to the developer anymore without them even asking for it formally.
Gosh. Well, that's an outrage.
Oh my
I
God.
mean, that's corruption on a really high level. And that's,
So at the peak, we had about $6 or $7 billion of real estate that was built. And before they ever put a shovel in the ground, we sued them on the environmental impact report. This was never disclosed to any of the people building. And when we won the lawsuit and it was in the news, they said, don't worry about it. And they just kept going. And when push came to shove, they just bent the courts to their will.
yeah.
And they never stopped. They never missed a day of work.
They're still doing it.
They're still doing it. And now the people have moved in on a disaster of environmental proportions that's hard to fathom, where the buildings are going to dissolve, the people are going to get sick and die, and they continue to build, and the buildings will fall down. The buildings will structurally fail.